Your own daughter and son-in-law served you coffee that reeked of bitter almonds. My secret recipe, he beamed proudly. My wife smiled sweetly. How nice. Then we discreetly swapped cups with them. An hour later, they were writhing in agony, begging for help, while we calmly watched their murder plot turn against them. They wanted our money and our house. Instead, they got only pain and the inevitable reckoning they so richly deserved. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Dennis Richardson. I'm 68 years old, and I spent 32 years as a detective with the Portland Police Department before retirement finally dragged me away from the job. These days, I live in a 2-story house on Cedar Heights Drive in West Hills with my wife, Gwen, and honestly, she's the only reason I agreed to retire in the first place. Dennis, she'd said, squeezing my hand over breakfast one morning, you've solved enough crimes. Let's solve the mystery of what retirement looks like together. How do you say no to that? Gwen is 65, retired school psychologist, and the smartest person I've ever met. We've been married 43 years, met at a community fundraiser back in 1982. She was volunteering at the registration desk, and I was there investigating a series of thefts. She caught me watching her and said, Detective, if you're trying to be subtle, you're failing spectacularly. I married her 18 months later. Best decision I ever made. She grows roses in our backyard that win prizes at the county fair, and she paints these delicate watercolors that somehow capture exactly what a moment feels like. I restore antique clocks in the garage. Something about bringing order back to chaos appeals to me. We have 2 kids. Our son Devin, 40, teaches history at Franklin High School. Good man, solid family, visits every Sunday for dinner with his wife and the grandkids. Then there's our daughter Quinn, 37 years old, and 5 years ago, she was still the sweet girl who'd bring Gwen flowers for no reason and laugh at my terrible jokes. Then she met Russell Morgan at some retail management conference. Within 6 months, she'd changed. Started talking about building wealth and optimizing assets. Started looking at our comfortable middle-class life like it embarrassed her. Started bringing Russell around. Russell, 41, calls himself an investment consultant, which I've learned is code for failed day trader, drowning in debt he won't admit to. Slick haircut, expensive watch that's probably fake, and this smile that never quite reaches his eyes. The kind of guy who shakes your hand too firmly while already looking past you for someone more important. Gwen spotted it immediately. That man, she told me after their 3rd visit, sees people as transactions, not human beings. She was right. She usually is. 14 months ago, Russell and Quinn moved into our house. Temporarily, they said, just while we're between places. Our mistake was believing them. Russell treats our home like he owns it, leaves his stuff everywhere, rearranges furniture without asking, once actually tried to give me advice on better investment vehicles for my pension. I smiled and said, Russell, I survived 32 years dealing with criminals. I think I can handle my own retirement fund. Gwen squeezed my hand under the table. Our signal, let it go, not worth the fight. But Quinn, watching my daughter become someone I barely recognize, that's the part that keeps me up at night. She used to call Gwen every Sunday just to talk. Now she only calls when she needs money. She used to ask about my clock restoration projects. Now she rolls her eyes and checks her phone. Last Thanksgiving, I overheard her on our back porch telling someone, once we get the house, we can finally start living the life we deserve. Gwen had heard it too. We didn't discuss it then, but we both filed it away. That was 5 months ago. Since then, things had gotten progressively stranger. Russell asking detailed questions about our life insurance policies. Quinn suddenly interested in our will and estate planning, both of them being unusually nice whenever they wanted something, unusually cold the rest of the time. Gwen and I would lie in bed at night, and she'd say, Something's wrong, Dennis. I can feel it. I'd pull her close and say, I know. We'll figure it out. But even with 32 years of detective work behind me, I didn't figure it out fast enough. The morning of March 15th started normal enough. Saturday, cool Portland morning. Rain tapping against the windows. I was at the kitchen table, working on a 1924 mantel clock that needed a new mainspring. Gwen was reviewing seed catalogs for her spring garden, making notes in that precise handwriting of hers. Quinn and Russell were still upstairs. They'd been out late the night before. Came home around midnight. I'd heard them whispering in the hallway, but couldn't make out the words. Around 9:30, Russell came down. He had this strange energy about him, excited but trying to hide it, like a kid with a secret. "Morning, Dennis. Morning, Gwen." Too cheerful, too bright. He went straight to the coffee maker and started brewing a fresh pot, which was unusual because he usually just grabbed whatever was already made. "Special occasion?" I asked, not looking up from the clock mechanism. "You could say that." He was practically humming while the coffee brewed. Quinn came down a few minutes later, and they exchanged this quick look. The kind of look Gwen and I share sometimes, the wordless communication of people who are on the same page about something. But this look had an edge to it, a nervous edge. Russell poured 4 cups of coffee with exaggerated care. Added cream and sugar to 2 of them, mine and Gwen's preferences, which he'd never bothered to remember before. Brought them to the table with a flourish that would have been charming if it hadn't been so out of character. "Made you coffee with my secret recipe," he announced, setting the cups in front of us. "Special day calls for special coffee." I looked at the cup. Dark liquid. Normal appearance. But when I leaned forward slightly, pretending to reach for the sugar bowl, I caught it. A faint chemical smell underneath the coffee aroma. Not quite right. Bitter almonds mixed with something metallic. My detective instincts kicked in immediately. That familiar prickle at the base of my skull that had kept me alive through 3 decades of police work. I glanced at Gwen. She'd gone very still, her hand frozen halfway to her cup. Her eyes met mine for a fraction of a second. In that look, I saw everything I needed to know. She'd caught it too. That smell. That wrongness. And in her eyes, I saw the same realization that was flooding through me like ice water. Our daughter and her husband had just tried to poison us. "How thoughtful," Gwen said, her voice perfectly calm. Warm, even. She's always been better at hiding her reactions than me. "That's very sweet of you, Russell." Quinn was watching us with an intensity that tried to look casual but failed. Russell had turned back to the counter, but I could see his shoulders tight with tension. They were waiting, watching to see if we'd drink. My mind was racing through possibilities, calculating odds, running through scenarios like I was back in the squad room working a case. Except this time, the suspects were my daughter and her manipulative husband, and the victims were me and the woman I'd loved for 43 years. I had maybe 10 seconds to decide our next move. 10 seconds before suspicion became certainty in Russell's mind. 10 seconds before we lost whatever advantage surprise might give us. I reached for my coffee cup. Gwen's hand moved toward hers, and in that moment, I knew exactly what we were going to do. Because after 43 years together, we don't need words. We just need that look, that understanding, that absolute trust that whatever comes next, we'll handle it together.
The moment I smelled that coffee, every instinct I'd developed over 38 years of working with troubled teenagers screamed danger. It wasn't just the chemical odor that Dennis noticed, though I caught that too, underneath the coffee and cream. It was something else, something in the air between Russell and Quinn. A tension that felt like a wire pulled too tight, about to snap. I've spent my career reading body language, passing out the truths that teenagers try to hide. You learn to see the tells, the nervous glances, the forced casualness, the overcompensation. Quinn was exhibiting all of them, standing by the refrigerator, trying to look relaxed, but her shoulders were rigid. Her eyes kept darting between me, Dennis, and those coffee cups like she was watching a tennis match. And Russell. Russell had this anticipatory energy, like an actor waiting for his cue to step on stage. When our eyes met, Dennis's and mine, the recognition was instant. We've had this kind of silent communication since the early days of our marriage, but this was different. This was urgent. This was life or death. I saw the knowledge in his eyes. He understood what this coffee meant, and he saw the same understanding reflected back from me. "That's very sweet of you, Russell," I said, keeping my voice gentle and warm. Inside, my heart was hammering. My daughter. my baby girl who I'd rocked to sleep every night for the first 3 years of her life. The little girl who used to pick dandelions for me and call them magic flowers. The young woman who'd sobbed in my arms after her first heartbreak and told me I was the best mother in the world. That same daughter had just watched her husband poison our coffee and said nothing. I've spent 5 years watching Quinn change, watching Russell isolate her from us, bit by bit. At first, it was subtle. Suggestions that they were too busy for Sunday dinners, comments about how our lifestyle choices were holding them back. Then it became more overt. Quinn started calling less, started needing money more, started looking at our home not as the place where she grew up, but as a resource to be claimed. 3 months ago, I was putting away laundry in their room. I know, but a mother's instincts die hard. And I found a notebook on Russell's nightstand. Pages of calculations, life insurance values, property assessments. Our names at the top of every page. I didn't tell Dennis right away. I wanted to believe there was an innocent explanation. I wanted to believe my daughter hadn't become someone who would see her parents as obstacles rather than family. But sitting at that kitchen table, smelling that poisoned coffee, I couldn't deny it anymore. My daughter had made her choice, and I had to make mine. Dennis reached for his cup. My hand moved toward mine, but our movements were practiced, synchronized by decades of partnership. Dennis's accidental cough, requiring him to set his cup down slightly to the left. My need to adjust my napkin, shifting Quinn's cup, the one meant for her, closer to me. Russell turning to fiddle with the coffee maker one more time, confident in his plan. Quinn looking out the window with studied nonchalance. In less than 10 seconds, we'd switched the cups. Mine was now in front of Quinn. Dennis's was now in front of Russell. We picked up the poisoned cups, the ones meant for them, and each took a careful sip. The coffee tasted normal enough if you could ignore the faint bitterness underneath. I forced myself to swallow, forced myself to smile. Delicious, Russell. What's your secret ingredient? Oh, just a little something special, he said, turning around with a grin that didn't quite hide the predatory gleam in his eyes. He picked up his cup, the one that had been Dennis's, the poisoned one, and drank deeply. Quinn did the same with hers, the cup that had originally been meant for me. I watched them drink, watched the satisfaction on Russell's face. Watched my daughter's shoulders finally relax, like she'd just cleared some impossible hurdle. They thought it was done. They thought we'd just consumed whatever poison Russell had mixed into our morning coffee. They thought by this afternoon, or tonight, or tomorrow morning, we'd be sick enough to warrant a hospital visit. And from there, well, I didn't want to think about what they'd planned from there. Dennis and I were just discussing our spring garden plans, I said, keeping my tone light. I'm thinking of expanding the rose beds, maybe adding some climbing varieties along the back fence. That sounds lovely, dear, Quinn said. Her voice was warm but distracted. Her mind was already moving forward, already counting money that didn't belong to her yet. Dennis launched into a story about one of his clock restoration projects. He's always been able to talk about those clocks for hours. Russell nodded along, pretending interest, but I could see him checking his watch, calculating. How long would the poison take to work? What symptoms should he expect to see first? He'd clearly done research. My son-in-law had researched how to murder us. I let Dennis's voice wash over me, comforting in its familiarity, while my mind worked through what I knew. I've spent decades helping teenagers navigate their worst impulses. I've seen manipulation. I've seen cruelty. I've seen the lies people tell themselves to justify terrible actions. But this was my daughter, my child. The baby I'd nursed through colic and teething and every childhood illness. The girl I'd taught to read, to ride a bike, to stand up for herself. How had I missed the signs that she'd lost her way this completely? But I hadn't missed all the signs. I'd seen Russell's influence growing, seen Quinn pulling away from us, seen the resentment building in her eyes every time she looked at our modest, comfortable life. I'd told myself it was a phase. I'd told myself love would bring her back eventually. I'd been wrong. After about 20 minutes, Dennis stood up. Well, I should get back to that clock. This mainspring isn't going to replace itself. He kissed the top of my head as he passed, a casual gesture we've done thousands of times, but I felt the tension in his fingers. The message, we need to talk. Soon. Russell and Quinn finished their coffee, chatting about their plans for the day. Normal conversation. Pleasant, even. Then they headed back upstairs, claiming they needed to return some phone calls. As soon as I heard their bedroom door close, Dennis was beside me. He didn't say anything. Just took my hand and squeezed it 3 times. Our old signal from the early days of his police work. I love you. We'll be okay. Trust me. I squeezed back 4 times. I love you too. Always. We sat there in our kitchen, in the house where we'd raised our children and built our life together, holding hands and facing the truth that our daughter had just tried to murder us. But we'd turned the tables. We'd done the one thing they never expected. We'd outsmarted them. And now, whatever poison Russell had chosen, whatever death he'd planned for us, Quinn and Russell were drinking it instead. What do we do? I whispered. Dennis's voice was quiet but steady. We wait. We watch. And when they start showing symptoms, we call 911. We play the concerned, confused parents. We have no idea what happened. He paused. And then, Gwen, we make sure they never get the chance to do this again. To us or anyone else. I looked at my husband. This man who'd stood beside me through 43 years of joy and struggle, who'd raised our children with me, who'd never once broken a promise or betrayed my trust. And I made a decision. Quinn had chosen Russell over us. She'd chosen money over family. She'd chosen murder over love. Those were her choices. Now Dennis and I would make ours. We document everything, I said. Every symptom they show. We save those coffee cups. We get evidence. Already thinking like a detective's wife, Dennis said, with a ghost of his usual humor. I've been your wife for 43 years, Dennis Richardson. I know how to build a case. His hand tightened on mine. This is going to hurt. Watching what happens next, knowing it's Quinn. I know. My voice cracked slightly. But she made her choice. Now we make ours. We survive. And we make sure justice is served. We sat together in the quiet kitchen, waiting for the poison to take effect. Waiting for our daughter and son-in-law to start experiencing the death they'd planned for us. And planning our next move. Because after 43 years together, Dennis and I are more than just a couple. We're a team, a partnership, a force that our daughter had severely underestimated. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. Like we always had. Like we always would.
About an hour after we'd switched those cups, I was back at the kitchen table, pretending to focus on my clock repair. My hands were steady. 32 years as a cop taught me how to fake calm when your adrenaline is screaming. Gwen was beside me, flipping through her seed catalog with impressive composure, but I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat from pavement in August. Russell was on the living room couch, scrolling through his phone. Quinn was in the chair by the window, staring at nothing, both of them trying too hard to look casual, waiting for us to collapse, probably, watching for the first signs that their plan had worked. Then Russell shifted, subtle at first, just a change in posture. He set his phone down and pressed his hand against his stomach. His face went a shade paler than it had been moments before. Quinn glanced at him. You okay? Yeah, just stomach feels weird. He tried to smile, but it came out crooked. Beads of sweat were forming along his hairline. Probably shouldn't have had that burrito last night. I kept my eyes on the clock parts, counting the seconds. Gwen's hand found mine under the table. Squeezed twice. Our signal. It's happening. 20 minutes later, Russell was bent forward on the couch, arms wrapped around his middle, skin gone gray. Quinn had started pacing, then suddenly grabbed the back of a chair for support. Her breathing came short and fast. I don't feel right, she said, voice tight. Russell, something's wrong. Must have been food poisoning, Russell managed through clenched teeth. But his eyes, I caught the flash of panic there, the dawning suspicion that this wasn't food poisoning at all. This was something else, something specific. I stood up, letting concern flood my expression. Easy enough when part of me, the father part, still hurt at seeing my daughter in pain, even if she'd tried to put us in a grave first. Quinn? Sweetheart, you look terrible. Both of you do? It's probably just a stomach bug, Russell said, but his voice shook. He was sweating through his shirt now, trembling. Gwen moved to Quinn's side. Dennis, I think we need to call someone. They're getting worse. No, we're fine, Quinn started, but then doubled over with a gasp. I pulled out my phone, dialing 911 with deliberate urgency. When the dispatcher answered, I let panic creep into my voice. Not entirely fake, honestly. My daughter and son-in-law, they're both sick. Really sick. Came on suddenly, vomiting, sweating, severe abdominal pain. I don't know what's happening. The dispatcher asked questions. I answered them, watching Russell try to stand, and immediately collapsed back onto the couch. Quinn was shaking, tears streaming down her face. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. The larger part just felt hollow. An ambulance is on the way, I told them after hanging up. Just, hold on. Russell's eyes met mine for a second. In that look, I saw calculation even through his pain. He was wondering, trying to work out how this could have happened. But he couldn't figure it, not yet. The poison, his poison, was tearing through him too fast for coherent thought. The ambulance arrived within 12 minutes. Paramedics swarmed in, asking rapid-fire questions while they checked vitals and loaded Quinn and Russell onto gurneys. I played the bewildered father-in-law perfectly. I don't understand. We all had breakfast together. Coffee, just coffee and some toast. The coffee, one paramedic said, glancing at his partner, could be something in it. But we all drank the same coffee, I said, letting confusion color my tone. My wife and I are fine. In the controlled chaos, I moved to the kitchen like I was clearing the way for the paramedics. Grabbed my phone, snapped quick photos of the 4 coffee cups still on the table, 2 with residue that Quinn and Russell had actually drunk from. Then I slipped on the latex gloves I kept in the garage workshop, carefully placed those 2 cups into plastic bags. Old habits from evidence collection. The paramedics were too focused on the patients to notice me working. Gwen caught my eye, gave a tiny nod. She'd seen what I was doing, understood immediately. We followed the ambulance to Providence Portland Medical Center, Gwen's hand gripped tight in mine. In the emergency room waiting area, we sat in those uncomfortable plastic chairs while doctors rushed Quinn and Russell through triage. A nurse came out after 40 minutes. They're being admitted. We're running tests, but preliminary indicators suggest acute poisoning, possibly arsenic or thallium, based on symptom presentation. Gwen's hand tightened on mine. I made my face show shock. Poisoning? How is that possible? We're still determining that, the nurse said carefully. The police will likely want to talk to you. Of course they would. Standard procedure in poisoning cases. I'd run dozens of these investigations myself back in the day. They kept Quinn and Russell overnight for observation and treatment. The poison, whatever Russell had used, probably arsenic given the symptoms, was in their systems at concerning levels. The doctors pumped them full of chelation agents and IV fluids, monitoring kidney function. Both were in serious condition but stable. Gwen and I stayed at the hospital until late evening, playing our roles. Concerned parents, confused and frightened. When we finally left, the night was cold and clear. In the car, neither of us spoke until we were several blocks from the hospital. Then Gwen let out a long, shaky breath. Our daughter tried to murder us, she said quietly. Yes. And we just saved her life by switching those cups. We saved our own lives, I corrected gently. What happens to them now? That's on them. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what do we do, Dennis? I thought about the evidence bags in my trunk, the photos on my phone, the security camera system I'd installed 2 years ago after a break-in scare in the neighborhood. Cameras Quinn and Russell didn't know about because they never paid attention to anything that didn't directly benefit them. We document everything, I said. We build a case, and then we make sure they can never do this again, to us or anyone else. We need help. I know. I was already running through names in my head. Walter Griffin, my old partner. He went private investigator after he retired. He can dig up their financials, track their movements, find out how deep this goes. You think this was planned, not just impulse? I thought about Russell's confidence this morning, the calculated way he'd serve that coffee. This was planned. The question is, how thoroughly? When we got home, the house felt different, tainted, like something poisonous had been living in it for months, and we'd only just noticed. I went straight to my office, booted up the computer that controlled our security system. Gwen stood behind me, her hands on my shoulders. Please tell me they're as stupid as I hope they are, she murmured. I pulled up the footage logs, scanning back through dates. Found one from 3 days earlier when Gwen and I had been out at the hardware store for a few hours. Queued it up. The kitchen came into view. Empty at first. Then Quinn and Russell entered, sat at the same table where we'd had coffee this morning. They were talking. Audio was decent on these cameras. Just need to be patient, Russell was saying. Once they're gone, everything transfers to you. The house alone is worth $870,000, plus their savings accounts, the life insurance. Life insurance? Quinn's voice uncertain. The policies I had you sign for them 8 months ago, remember? $500,000 each. You're the beneficiary. My blood went cold. Gwen's fingers dug into my shoulders. On screen, Quinn was shaking her head. I didn't think we'd actually... you said it was just for emergency planning. Quinn, Russell's voice turned sharp. We're in debt up to our necks. I owe people who don't take "I'll pay you back eventually" as an answer. This is the only way out. Your parents are old. They've lived their lives. It's our turn now. But poisoning them... Quinn's voice was small, almost childlike. For a second I saw my little girl again, the one who used to believe good always won and bad always lost. Then Russell took her hand, his voice going soft and manipulative. It'll look natural. Elderly couple. Probably food poisoning or household accident. No one will question it. And then we're free. We can finally start the life we deserve. Quinn was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay. When? This weekend. I'll make coffee. My secret recipe. His smile made my stomach turn. The footage continued. Them discussing details. Timing. How to act afterward. Every word a nail in their coffin. I stopped the playback. Gwen and I stood there in silence, the evidence of our daughter's betrayal frozen on screen. She agreed to it, Gwen whispered. She knew. She chose this. Yes. My jaw was tight. She did. Gwen moved around the desk to face me. Her eyes were red but dry, filled with a determination I recognized. The same look she'd get when a student came to her with an impossible problem, and she'd decide she was going to fix it, no matter what it took. What's our next move? She asked. I thought about the evidence bags in my car, the security footage, the confession we'd just watched, the fact that Quinn and Russell had tried to murder us and would likely try again once they recovered. First thing tomorrow, I call Walter, have him start digging into their finances, their communications, everything. Find out how deep this conspiracy goes. I paused. Then we need a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Someone who specializes in criminal defense and estate planning. Why estate planning? Because if Quinn tried to set up life insurance policies in her name without us knowing, there might be other documents she's forged. Property deeds, power of attorney forms. We need to know what legal landmines they've planted. Gwen nodded slowly. And we don't tell them we know. Not yet. Let them recover. Let them think we're clueless, that whatever happened was just some terrible accident they barely survived. I met her eyes, and while they're feeling safe, we gather every piece of evidence we need to bury them. This is going to hurt, Gwen said quietly, building a case against our own daughter. She stopped being just our daughter the moment she agreed to put poison in our coffee. My voice came out harder than I intended. Gwen flinched slightly. I softened my tone. I'm sorry, No, you're right. She took my hands. She made her choice. Russell didn't force her, didn't threaten her. She chose money and him over us, over everything we taught her. And now we have to protect ourselves, because they'll try again. They will, I agreed. But next time, we'll be ready. More than ready. We stood there in my office, holding hands. The security footage still paused on screen, showing our daughter conspiring to murder us. And I made a decision. Quinn and Russell wanted our money, our house, our lives. They were going to get something else entirely. They were going to get justice. Cold, methodical, and absolutely unavoidable. And they'd never see it coming until it was far too late.
2 days passed before they let us see Quinn and Russell. 2 days of staying in our home that suddenly felt contaminated, sleeping in our bed, knowing our daughter had walked these same halls planning our deaths. I kept touching things. The kitchen counter where Russell had prepared the poisoned coffee, the couch where they'd waited for us to die, and feeling this disconnect, like I was living in someone else's nightmare. But Dennis and I didn't waste those 2 days. We moved with purpose, with strategy. This was war now, and we intended to win. The morning after the poisoning, Dennis called his former partner. Walter Griffin ran a private investigation firm downtown now, worked out of a modest office that smelled like coffee and old case files. He'd been Dennis's partner for 12 years before Dennis made detective, and they'd stayed close through the decades. When Dennis explained what we needed, Walter didn't even hesitate. "I'll start with financial records," he said, spreading a notebook on his desk. "Bank accounts, credit cards, loans. If they're planning something this big, there'll be traces. People always leave traces." "How long?" I asked. Walter's expression was grim. "Give me a week for preliminaries. Thorough deep dive will take longer, but I'll have enough to show you the shape of things within 7 days." We also needed legal counsel, not the friendly neighborhood lawyer who'd handled our will updates, but someone who understood criminal law inside and out. Dennis's police connections led us to Philip Hayes, a criminal and estate attorney with an office on Southwest Broadway. 58 years old, steel grey hair, eyes that evaluated you like evidence on a witness stand. "Attempted murder," Philip said after we'd explained everything, his pen tapping against his legal pad. "Conspiracy to commit murder. Potential forgery of legal documents. If what you're telling me is accurate, we're looking at serious felony charges." "It's accurate," Dennis said. He'd brought the security footage on a flash drive, the photos of the coffee cups. "And you switched the cups? So they drank their own poison?" "Yes." I felt my throat tighten saying it out loud. Admitting that we'd let our daughter poison herself, even if it was self-defense, even if it was survival. Philip was quiet for a moment, studying us. "Why haven't you gone to the police yet?" "Because I want to know everything first," Dennis said. "If Quinn forged life insurance policies, what else did she forge? If Russell's in debt, who does he owe? How long has this been planned? I want the complete picture before we act." "Smart." Philip nodded. "Oregon has strong protections under the Slayer rule. A person who unlawfully kills or attempts to kill an heir or devisee forfeits all benefits. If we can prove Quinn attempted to murder you, she loses all inheritance rights. Permanently." "Good," I said. The word came out harder than I expected, but I meant it. Quinn had surrendered her place in this family when she chose murder. Philip leaned forward. "Here's what I recommend. Document everything. Keep records of all interactions with them once they're released. Save every text message, every email, every conversation you can. Don't confront them yet. Let them think they're safe. Meanwhile, we build an airtight case. When we do move, it'll be overwhelming and inescapable." That became our strategy. Patience, documentation, calculated precision. The hospital finally cleared us to visit on the 3rd day. Quinn was in room 347, still hooked up to IVs, but sitting upright, colour returning to her face. When I walked in, her eyes filled with tears. "Mum," she said, reaching for me. I took her hand, felt the warmth of her skin, the pulse in her wrist. My baby girl, who'd once been afraid of thunderstorms and would climb into our bed seeking comfort. Who'd won the 5th grade science fair with a project on butterfly migration. Who'd called me her best friend well into her 20s. Where did that girl go? When did she become this stranger who could plot my death? "How are you feeling?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. "Better. They said another few hours and—" She shuddered. "I don't even want to think about it. The doctors said it was arsenic poisoning. In our coffee. How is that possible?" "We don't know." I lied smoothly. The police are investigating. Where's Dad? With Russell. We wanted to make sure you were both okay. Quinn squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry we scared you. This whole thing is it's insane. Who would do something like this? I looked at my daughter, at her wide eyes, her trembling lip, her performance of innocence, and felt something inside me go very, very cold. She thought we were fooled. She actually believed we had no idea what she'd done. I don't know, sweetheart, I said. But I'm sure the police will figure it out. We stayed for an hour. Dennis joined us halfway through, and we played the roles of concerned, confused parents. When we left, Russell and Quinn exchanged a look I recognized. Relief mixed with calculation. They thought they'd gotten away with it. Perfect. Over the next several weeks, Walter worked his magic. He was thorough, methodical, relentless. Each report he sent revealed another layer of Quinn and Russell's desperation and planning. Russell owed $89,000 to 3 different casinos, another $47,000 on credit cards, $77,000 to something called Apex Financial Solutions, which Walter identified as a high-interest loan operation 1 step away from loan sharking. Total debt, $213,000. Quinn wasn't much better. Credit card debt, car loans she couldn't afford, personal loans from friends she'd never repaid, $127,000 in the hole and sinking. But the life insurance policies were the smoking gun. Walter tracked them down. 2 policies, $500,000 each, with our forged signatures. Quinn listed as sole beneficiary. The insurance company had processed them without question 8 months ago because the signatures looked legitimate. They were that good at fraud. There's more, Walter said during one of our meetings at his office. He slid a document across the desk. Draft quitclaim deed for your house. Never filed, but prepared. Russell used an online legal service to generate it. According to this, you're supposedly transferring ownership of the Cedar Heights property to Quinn. Dennis went very still beside me. When was this dated? 6 weeks ago. They were planning to file it after we were dead, I said quietly. Most likely. Walter nodded. With you gone, Quinn produces this document, claims you'd decided to transfer the house before you died, and because you're not around to contest it. She gets the house without inheritance taxes or legal complications, Dennis finished. His voice was flat, controlled. I knew that tone. He was furious, but channeling it into cold calculation. Walter had more. He'd traced Russell's online activity, found cryptocurrency transactions that led to dark web marketplaces, purchases of arsenic trioxide, searches for undetectable poisons and natural-looking deaths, communications with someone using the handle chemadvice, discussing dosages and symptoms. This wasn't impulsive, Walter said. This was premeditated murder, planned over months. They researched, prepared, created backup documentation, and executed. The only thing they didn't account for was you being too smart to drink their poison. I thought about Quinn sitting in that hospital bed, crying and calling me Mom, asking who could do such a terrible thing. The performance of it. The absolute shamelessness. We need to show this to Detective Anderson, Dennis said. Get an official investigation started. Agreed, Walter said, but strategically. We want this airtight before they can destroy evidence or flee. The next weeks were strange. Quinn and Russell came home from the hospital, still weak but recovering. We helped them, brought them food, showed concern. They ate it up, relaxed into the role of victims rather than would-be murderers. I watched Russell at our dinner table, laughing at Dennis's jokes, accepting our hospitality. I watched Quinn hug me goodnight, tell me she loved me, smile that sweet smile that used to be genuine. And I smiled back, played the doting mother, while inside I was cataloguing every lie, every manipulation, every moment of deception. Dennis and I would retreat to our bedroom each night and debrief like military strategists. He'd update me on Walter's findings. I'd share observations about Quinn and Russell's behavior, the psychological patterns I noticed. We were building something together, not just a case, but a unified front, a partnership sharpened by betrayal into something harder, more dangerous. They think we're weak, I said one night, lying in bed beside my husband. They see us as old, naive, easy marks. Let them think that, Dennis replied. Underestimating your opponent is a tactical error, and they're making plenty of those. 3 weeks after the poisoning, Philip called us into his office again. He'd reviewed all of Walter's evidence, cross-referenced it with Oregon law, and built what he called a prosecutable case with redundant verification. Here's where we stand, he said, laying out documents like cards in a winning hand. Attempted murder, first degree, premeditated, conspiracy to commit murder, forgery, fraud, identity theft, and under Oregon's Slayer rule, Quinn forfeits all inheritance rights, not just from your estate, from any future estate interest involving either of you. How do we want to proceed? Dennis asked. Philip smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone who knew they held a winning hand and was about to play it. We go big, he said. Public revelation, family gathering, police present, maximum impact, maximum witnesses, zero chance for them to spin a narrative or disappear. We destroy their credibility, their freedom, and their future in one decisive move. I thought about that, about Quinn, standing in a room full of family and friends, hearing her crimes laid bare, about Russell's smug confidence crumbling, about everyone, knowing what they'd done. When? I asked. We need a few more weeks for Detective Anderson to complete the official investigation. She's working with Walter, building the police case parallel to ours. Then we schedule your family gathering. Make it natural. Anniversary celebration, holiday, whatever fits. They show up expecting good news. Instead, they get arrested. Dennis finished. Exactly. I looked at my husband. 43 years of marriage, and I could read his face like my own. He was thinking the same thing I was. This was really happening. We were going to destroy our daughter's life because she'd tried to destroy ours first. She made her choice? I said, as much to myself as to him. Dennis took my hand. Yes, she did. We left Philip's office with a plan, a timeline, a strategy that would culminate in one devastating moment when Quinn and Russell realized too late that they'd underestimated us completely. That night, back home, Dennis and I sat in our living room. Russell and Quinn were upstairs in their room, probably planning their next move, still thinking they'd gotten away with attempted murder. Are you okay? Dennis asked me quietly. I thought about it, really thought about it. Was I okay with turning my daughter over to the police? With watching her go to prison? With severing that bond permanently and publicly? No, I admitted. But I will be. Once this is over and justice is served, I'll be able to live with it. Me too. He squeezed my hand. Our signal. Together. Always together. We sat there in silence, two people who'd built a life on love and trust, now preparing to wage war against the child we'd raised. It hurt. It would always hurt. But Quinn had broken something fundamental when she chose poison over family, and now Dennis and I were going to make sure she and Russell paid the price. We were done being victims, done being prey. Now we were hunters. And our daughter had no idea the trap was already closing.
A week after our meeting with Philip, I sat across from Walter Griffin in his downtown office. The place hadn't changed much since his police days. Same cluttered desk, same coffee-stained case files, same map of Portland on the wall, with pins marking old investigations. But Walter had traded his badge for a private investigator's license, and judging by the stack of documents in front of him, he was very good at what he did. "You're not going to like this," Walter said, sliding the first file across his desk. I'd heard that opening line 1,000 times as a cop. It never meant anything good. I opened the file. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents. Russell's financial life spread out like evidence at a crime scene. "Casino debt," Walter explained, pointing to highlighted sections. 3 different establishments in Vegas and Reno. total of $89,000. He's been feeding them minimum payments for 18 months, but the interest is killing him. Then there's the credit cards, 47,000 across 6 accounts, all maxed out. What about the high-interest loan? Walter's expression darkened. Apex Financial Solutions? It's technically legal, but barely. 77,000 at 39% APR. The kind of place that sends very persuasive collectors when payments are late. Russell's 4 months behind. I did the math quickly. $213,000. And counting. The interest alone is about $3,000 a month at this point. He can't keep up. Walter pulled out another document. Then there's Quinn. Your daughter's drowning too. Credit card debt. Car loans she can't afford. Personal loans from friends she's ghosting. $127,000 in the hole. My jaw tightened. $340,000 combined. And they decided our deaths were the solution. But here's where it gets really ugly, Walter continued. He opened a manila envelope and carefully extracted 2 insurance documents. Life insurance policies, $500,000 each, one on you, one on Gwen, signed and processed 8 months ago. I took them, my hands steady despite the anger burning in my chest. The signatures looked like mine and Gwen's. Perfect forgeries. I never signed this. I know. I had a forensic document examiner take a look. Off the record. She's 95% certain these are forgeries. Probably traced from legitimate documents Quinn had access to. Birth certificates, mortgage papers, something like that. Beneficiary? Quinn Richardson Morgan, all of it. $1 million. Plus our house worth $870,000. Plus our savings, about $340,000. That was the price they'd put on our lives. $2,210,000. Walter wasn't done. He pulled out another document. Draft quitclaim deed for your property on Cedar Heights Drive. Never filed with the county, but prepared. According to this, you're transferring full ownership to Quinn. When? Dated 6 weeks ago. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. This wasn't impulse. This wasn't desperation making them reckless. This was calculated, methodical planning. They'd been setting up the legal framework to steal everything we owned, and the poisoning was just the final step. There's more, Walter said quietly. He pulled up something on his laptop, turned the screen toward me. Russell's online activity. I tracked him through some cryptocurrency transactions. Won't bore you with the technical details, but it led to dark web marketplaces. Purchases of arsenic trioxide. 3 separate transactions over 4 months. He was testing it, I said. Figuring out doses. Timing. Exactly. And look at this. Walter clicked through to what looked like a forum thread. Username InvestSmart42. That's Russell. I verified it through crossover posts on legitimate investment forums. He's asking someone called ChemAdvice about undetectable poisons, symptoms that mimic natural illness, proper dosages for adult victims. I read the messages, my hands clenched into fists. Russell asking, how much to ensure effectiveness without immediate symptoms? ChemAdvice responding with detailed chemical information, timing charts, advice on delivery methods. Can we trace ChemAdvice? Already did. Guy in Nevada, arrested 3 times for illegal substance distribution, never convicted. The feds have him on their radar, but nothing solid enough to prosecute yet. Your son-in-law found him through some very specific dark web searching. I sat back, processing it all. The debt, the forged insurance, the planned property theft, the methodical research into murder by poison. Quinn and Russell hadn't just decided one morning to kill us. They'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. This is premeditated murder, I said. First degree. With conspiracy charges, forgery, fraud, identity theft, Walter nodded. Oregon doesn't mess around with attempted murder. We're looking at serious prison time if you want to prosecute. Oh, I want to prosecute. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. I want them buried so deep they never see daylight again. Walter studied me for a moment. Dennis, I worked with you for 12 years. I know that look. You're not just building a case. You're planning something. Justice, I said simply. Full, complete public justice. I want everyone to know what they did. I want their reputations destroyed. I want them to face consequences so severe They regret ever thinking about killing us. What do you need from me? Everything you can find: bank records, communication logs, witness statements from anyone who heard them complain about us or talk about money, digital forensics on their devices if you can get it. Build me an airtight case that a prosecutor dreams about. Walter smiled, the same smile he'd had when we were closing in on a suspect who thought they'd outsmarted us. You know I'm good at that. The best, I agreed. I called Gwen from the car. We need to meet with Philip again, and I think it's time to bring in someone official. Detective Anderson? Gwen's voice was steady, but I heard the weight behind it. Once we involved the police officially, there was no going back. Yes, but we control the timing. We control how this unfolds. We're not just reporting a crime. We're orchestrating justice. That evening, Gwen and I sat at our kitchen table, the same table where Russell had served us poisoned coffee, and laid out Walter's reports, the financial documents, the insurance forgeries, the dark web evidence, the property deed, everything that proved our daughter and son-in-law had planned our murders with chilling precision. They're still upstairs, Gwen said quietly, acting like nothing happened, like they didn't try to kill us 3 weeks ago. Let them, I replied. Every day they think they're safe is another day we gather evidence, another day we build the case, and when we finally move, when we spring the trap, it'll be so complete they won't be able to breathe. Gwen reached across the table, took my hand. I keep thinking about Quinn as a little girl, wondering where I failed as a mother. You didn't fail, she made choices, bad choices. And Russell, he saw her weaknesses and exploited them. But ultimately she chose this path. She chose money over family, murder over morality. Do you think they'd try again? I thought about the desperation in Russell's financial situation, the collectors calling, the mounting interest, the fact that we were still alive and still owned everything they wanted. Eventually, yes, if they get desperate enough or confident enough, which is why we need to act first. The next morning, I made a call I'd been avoiding. My son Devin answered on the second ring. Hey, Dad, everything okay? How do you tell your son that his sister tried to murder his parents? How do you shatter his image of his family with that truth? Devin, I need you to come over, today if possible. There's something your mother and I need to discuss with you. It's important. Silence on the other end. Then, this is about Quinn, isn't it? How did you... Dad, I'm not blind. I've seen how she's changed. The way she looks at you and Mom lately, like you're obstacles instead of parents. And Russell's influence, he sighed. I'll be there in an hour. When Devin arrived, we sat him down in the living room, made sure Quinn and Russell were out of the house first, shopping or whatever they claimed. We showed him everything, the security footage, the financial evidence, the forged documents, the poisoning attempt. My son's face went through every emotion in 30 seconds. Disbelief, shock, horror, rage, finally settling on a kind of numb devastation. My sister, he said quietly, my sister tried to murder you. Yes, Gwen said, her voice gentle but firm. She did. What are you going to do? I exchanged a glance with Gwen, our wordless communication honed over 43 years. Then I turned back to Devin. We're going to make sure she and Russell face justice. Complete, public, inescapable justice. And we need you to know that when it happens, it's going to be brutal. It's going to hurt, but it's necessary. Devin sat there for a long moment, processing. Then he straightened, and I saw my son become a man making a hard choice. What do you need from me? Your support and your silence. No one can know we're planning this, especially not Quinn or Russell. You have it. He looked at both of us. I love my sister, but what she did, there's no coming back from that. You do what you need to do. I'll stand with you. After Devin left, Gwen came up behind me, wrapped her arms around my waist. One more person on our side. The right person, I agreed. Now we just need to set the final pieces in motion. I called Detective Roberta Anderson, my former colleague, now a detective in the Major Crimes Unit. We'd worked together on dozens of cases over the years. She was sharp, thorough, and most importantly, she knew how to build a prosecution case that stuck. Roberta, it's Dennis Richardson. I need to meet with you. Privately. I have evidence of attempted murder, and I need your help making sure the investigation is airtight. She didn't hesitate. When and where? Your office. Tomorrow morning. And Roberta? This one's going to hurt. It's personal. How personal? Family. There was a pause. Then quietly. I'll make sure we get this right, Dennis. Whatever you need. Hanging up, I felt something shift. The pieces were moving. The trap was being set. Quinn and Russell were still upstairs, probably congratulating themselves on getting away with murder, probably planning how to spend our money. They had no idea that every day they felt safe was just us sharpening the blade. Every moment of their confidence was just us tightening the noose. And when we finally brought everything crashing down on them, it would be so complete, so overwhelming, so public that they'd never recover. Gwen appeared in the doorway. Dennis, I turned to her. Tomorrow we make it official. After that, there's no going back. She nodded. Good. I'm ready to stop pretending. I'm ready to end this. I pulled her close, kissed her forehead. 43 years together. And you still surprise me with how strong you are? We're strong, she corrected. Together. Always together. And standing there in our home that our daughter had tried to steal, holding the woman she'd tried to murder, I felt something settle into place. Justice was coming, and it was going to be absolutely, perfectly merciless.
A month passed. One long, strange month of living in our house with two people who'd tried to murder us, watching them play the roles of recovering victims, concerned family members, loving daughter and son-in-law. Every dinner was theatre. Every conversation was performance art. And through it all, Dennis and I maintained our own performance. The confused, worried parents who had no idea what had really happened. It was exhausting and oddly satisfying. That first week, after Dennis met with Detective Anderson, was carefully orchestrated. Roberta came to our house one afternoon when Quinn and Russell were out. She needed to see the security footage firsthand, needed to understand the layout of where the poisoning occurred. She spent 3 hours in Dennis's office, watching the videos, reviewing Walter's evidence, taking detailed notes. This is one of the most clear-cut attempted murder cases I've seen in 15 years, she said finally. Premeditation, conspiracy, financial motive, documentary evidence, plus the actual poisoning attempt captured on video. Any prosecutor would love this case. But, I heard the hesitation in her voice, but it's going to destroy your daughter's life. Are you absolutely certain this is how you want to proceed? Dennis and I had discussed this question so many times. In bed at night, over morning coffee, during long walks when we needed to think. Every time we came back to the same answer. She tried to kill us, Dennis said simply. She chose that. We're just making sure there are consequences. Roberta nodded slowly. Okay, here's how we proceed. I'll open an official investigation, but we keep it quiet. No interviewing Quinn or Russell yet. We don't want to spook them. Meanwhile, I coordinate with Walter's investigation, get search warrants for their financial records and electronic devices, build the case until it's ironclad. Then, she looked at us both. Then you decide how you want this to end. Public exposure, I said. We want everyone to know what they did. That can be arranged. Roberta's expression was grim. Trust me, by the time this is done, everyone will know. The next few weeks were a masterclass in pretending. Quinn came home one evening with takeout, all smiles and affection. Mom? Dad? I got that Thai food you love. Thought we could have a family dinner? We sat around the table, the same table where she'd drunk her own poison, and made small talk. She asked about my rose garden. Russell discussed his latest investment opportunities with Dennis. They were so convinced of their safety, so certain we suspected nothing. I watched my daughter across the table. Really watched her. Studied the way she laughed at Russell's jokes, the way she touched his arm possessively, the way her eyes would occasionally flicker to Dennis and me with something I'd once thought was love, but now recognized as calculation. When did I lose you? I kept thinking. When did my little girl become someone who could plot my death? But I kept those thoughts locked away. Instead, I smiled. Quinn, This is wonderful. Thank you for thinking of us. She beamed. Of course, Mum. You and Dad are everything to me. The lie hung in the air like poison gas, but I just smiled wider and took another bite of pad thai. Dennis and I had developed signals, 3 squeezes of the hand. I love you. Stay strong. 2 taps on the shoulder. Time to change the subject. A specific look across the room. Get ready to act. We'd been partners for over 4 decades, but this nightmare had refined our communication to an art form. One afternoon in early May, Russell actually had the audacity to ask Dennis for financial advice. Dennis, you managed your retirement funds pretty well, right? Could you help me understand some investment strategies? I've got some money coming in soon. He caught himself, probably realizing how that sounded. From a client project. Want to invest it wisely. Money coming in soon? He meant our life insurance. $1 million he thought he'd be collecting. Dennis kept his expression neutral. Sure, Russell. Let's talk about it this weekend. After Russell left the room, I saw my husband's jaw tighten. The only sign of the rage I knew was burning inside him. Soon, I whispered. Very soon. The breakthrough came in mid-June. Walter called one evening while Quinn and Russell were upstairs. Dennis put him on speaker, quiet enough that only we could hear. Found something big, Walter said. Managed to get access to Russell's computer with Detective Anderson's search warrant. Email correspondence with someone named Marcus Chen. Russell's asking for a loan, $50,000, and mentions in the email that he'll have access to significant assets within the month and can guarantee repayment. When was this sent? Dennis asked. 2 weeks before the poisoning attempt. He was already counting our money, I said quietly. Already spending it in his mind. There's more, Walter continued. Quinn's text messages with a friend. She wrote, and I quote, "Once my parents are out of the picture, Russell and I can finally start living the life we deserve. No more begging them for money or listening to their judgment." Sent 4 days before the poisoning. I felt something crack inside me. Not surprise. I'd known she was complicit. But seeing it in writing, seeing my daughter discuss our deaths so casually. Dennis must have seen something in my face because he immediately took my hand, squeezed 3 times. I love you. Stay strong. Send everything to Detective Anderson? Dennis said into the phone. Every email, every text, every shred of evidence. We're almost ready. Almost? I asked after he hung up. Philip has one more piece to arrange. Then we execute. The following week, Dennis met with Philip and Roberta together. They were planning something, but Dennis was keeping the final details close. You'll know when it's time, he told me. Trust me. I did trust him, completely. But the waiting was becoming unbearable. Living in this house, maintaining this pretense, watching Quinn hug me goodnight, knowing she'd tried to murder me, it was taking a toll. Then one evening in late July, everything shifted. We were all in the living room. Quinn was on her phone. Russell was watching television. Dennis was reading. I was working on a watercolor by the window. A perfectly normal family evening. Dennis's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw something change in his expression. He looked at me, gave a slight nod. It was time. Quinn? Russell? Dennis said casually, setting down his book. Gwen and I have been thinking. We'd like to have a family gathering, maybe early September. Celebrate our anniversary, make some important announcements about the estate. Quinn's eyes lit up. Russell tried to look casual, but I saw the hunger in his expression. That sounds wonderful, Dad, Quinn said. What kind of announcements? Oh, just some updates to our will. Financial planning. That sort of thing. Dennis smiled. We're not getting any younger, and we want to make sure everything's properly arranged. I watched them exchange a glance. Quinn's hand found Russell's. They thought this was it. They thought we were going to hand them everything, make it easy. They thought they'd won. We'd love to be there, Russell said smoothly. Family is everything. Yes, I agreed quietly, looking at my daughter. Family is everything. After they went upstairs that night, Dennis pulled me into his office. On his computer screen was an email from Philip. The plan was laid out in detail: dates, timing, guest list, coordination with Detective Anderson and the district attorney's office. September 14th, Dennis said. That's when we do this. That's 6 weeks away. 6 weeks for Anderson to finalize the investigation? 6 weeks for Philip to prepare all the legal documentation. 6 weeks for us to invite family and friends, make it look completely natural. He turned to me. 6 weeks for them to get comfortable, confident, and completely unprepared for what's coming. I looked at the plan, saw how every piece fit together, how every moment would be calculated for maximum impact, how Quinn and Russell would walk into our home expecting celebration and wealth, and instead find their entire world collapsing. It's perfect, I said. It's justice, Dennis corrected. The next 6 weeks were the longest of my life. We sent out invitations, our anniversary celebration, important family news, please join us. Our son Devin agreed to come with his wife and kids, my sister from Seattle, Dennis's brother from California, close friends, everyone who mattered to us. Quinn and Russell RSVP'd immediately. Of course they did. I watched my daughter during those weeks, really studied her, looking for any sign of remorse, any hint that she understood what she'd tried to do. But there was nothing. She was excited, energized, already mentally spending our money. Russell was the same, increasingly confident, even arrogant. At one dinner, he actually started giving me advice on maximizing estate distribution for tax purposes. I smiled and nodded and made mental notes for the prosecutor. The night before the gathering, Dennis and I lay in bed, holding hands in the darkness. Last chance to back out, he said quietly. We're not backing out. I know, but I had to offer. He squeezed my hand 3 times. Tomorrow, everything changes. Good, I said. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of playing victim in my own home. Tomorrow, we stop being prey. Tomorrow, we roar, Dennis agreed. I turned to face him. Quinn's going to hate us, forever. She already made her choice. Tomorrow, we just make sure there are consequences for that choice. I know. My voice cracked slightly. It hurts. Dennis pulled me close. Of course it hurts. She's our daughter. But she tried to murder us, Gwen. Us. And she'd try again if given the chance. We're protecting ourselves. We're protecting anyone else she might target. We're doing the right thing. Doesn't make it easier. No, he agreed, but it makes it necessary. We lay there in the darkness, 2 people who'd built a life on love and trust, preparing to destroy their daughter's world. Because she'd tried to destroy ours first. Because justice demanded it. Because we refused to be victims. Tomorrow, Quinn and Russell would walk into our home expecting a celebration. Instead, they'd find Judgment Day. And I was ready. After 43 years with Dennis, after raising 2 children, after building a life we were proud of, I was finally ready to stop playing nice with the people who'd tried to take it all away. Tomorrow, they'd learn that underestimating us was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. Tomorrow, justice would be served. Cold, complete, and absolutely unforgiving. Tomorrow, we'd show them exactly what happens when you try to poison the wrong couple.
The weeks after announcing our family gathering were almost comical. Quinn and Russell could barely contain their excitement. They thought their ship had finally come in. They thought we were about to hand them everything on a silver platter. If they'd been paying attention, if they'd spent even 5 minutes thinking about who we actually were, they might have noticed the trap closing around them. But greed makes people stupid, and Russell and Quinn were proving spectacularly stupid. About 2 weeks after we'd set the date, Russell cornered me in the garage while I was working on a particularly stubborn clock mechanism from 1887. Beautiful piece, seized mainspring that needed patient attention. "Dennis, can I ask you something?" Russell's tone was that fake casual he used when he wanted something. Sure. I didn't look up from the clock parts. This family gathering, the estate announcements. Are you and Gwen planning to... Quinn and I were wondering if we're giving you money? I glanced up, kept my expression neutral. Curious, not hostile. Well, not just money. We know the house is worth quite a bit, and with our situation... He caught himself. We'd take good care of it. Better than it's been maintained, honestly. No offense, but some of these systems are pretty outdated. I set down my tools very carefully, looked at him directly. You want our house. Not want, exactly, just... Quinn mentioned that you and Gwen might be thinking about downsizing, moving into something more manageable for your age. And we thought, why let it go to strangers? Keep it in the family. My age. This man who'd tried to poison us was now suggesting we were too old to manage our own home. The audacity was almost impressive. That's thoughtful of you, Russell, I said evenly. I'll discuss it with Gwen. His face lit up. Really? Because we've already been looking at some investment opportunities. Once we have more capital to work with, Russell, I let a hint of steel enter my voice. Let's not count money before it's transferred. He backed off, hands up in mock surrender. Of course. Just planning ahead. That's what good investors do. After he left, I texted Gwen. He just asked about getting the house. Actually said we're too old to manage it properly. Her response came immediately. The nerve. How much longer do we have to pretend? 3 weeks. Then they get exactly what they deserve. But Russell's arrogance gave me an idea. That evening, when all 4 of us were having dinner, another performance of Happy Family, I brought it up. Russell, you mentioned investments earlier. What would you say to someone who came in to say, $2 million suddenly? How would you advise them to handle it? Russell's eyes gleamed. Quinn set down her fork, attention laser-focused. $2 million is significant capital, Russell said, warming to his element. First, you'd want to diversify. Real estate, definitely. Maybe some blue-chip stocks. Cryptocurrency, if you're willing to take calculated risks. He was practically salivating. Is this hypothetical, or just curious? I said mildly. Gwen and I have been thinking about our estate planning, making sure everything's properly arranged. We want to make sure the right people benefit, Gwen added, her voice perfectly warm. The people who've been there for us? Who care about us? Quinn reached across the table, took Gwen's hand. Mom, Dad, you know Russell and I love you. Whatever you decide, we support it. I watched my daughter lie to her mother's face with practiced ease, watched her pretend love while planning murder. It took everything I had to smile and nod. After dinner, I met with Detective Anderson at a coffee shop across town. She slid a folder across the table. District Attorney's office is on board, Roberta said quietly. With the evidence we have, they're confident of conviction. Attempted murder, first degree, conspiracy, fraud, forgery. We're looking at serious prison time. How do you want to handle the arrest? That's your call. We can pick them up quietly, or... She raised an eyebrow. Philip mentioned you had something more public in mind. I want them to understand what they did, I said. I want everyone to know. And I want them to have 0 time to prepare a defense or destroy evidence. The gathering? Exactly. They'll be relaxed, confident, surrounded by family who'll witness everything. We present the evidence, then you make the arrest. Maximum impact. Roberta nodded slowly. It's unorthodox, but legal. And given the nature of the crime, family attempting to murder family, I think the DA will appreciate the message it sends. That attempted murder has consequences? That even your own children can't escape justice if they try to kill you? Her expression hardened. This one's personal for me too, Dennis. I've seen a lot of ugly cases, but this, using poison, forging documents, planning it for months, they deserve everything that's coming. The next day, Walter called. His final report was ready. I drove to his office, found him looking exhausted but satisfied. I've got everything, he said, spreading documents across his desk. The cryptocurrency trail leading to the arsenic purchase. Russell's username on the dark web forums, InvestSmart42, matched to his other online accounts through IP addresses and posting patterns. Text messages between Quinn and a friend where she literally says, "Once my parents are out of the picture." Email to a loan shark promising repayment within the month, sent 2 weeks before the poisoning attempt. That's the smoking gun. That's the entire arsenal, Walter corrected. plus witness statements from 3 of Quinn's coworkers. Apparently, she's been complaining about you and Gwen for months. One quote that stood out: "They're holding on to that house like they're going to live forever. At this rate, I'll be old before I get what's mine." I felt cold rage settle in my chest. She said that out loud, at work, to multiple people. She didn't think any of it would come back to haunt her. Walter leaned back. "Dennis, this case is airtight. Even with the best defense attorney money can buy, which they don't have, they're looking at 15 to 20 years minimum." "Good. Are you okay with that? Really okay? She's your daughter." I thought about Quinn at 7 years old, crying because she'd skinned her knee. Quinn at 16, excited about her first date. Quinn at 25, telling us she'd gotten promoted at work and we were the first people she wanted to tell. Then I thought about Quinn at 37, standing in our kitchen, watching us drink poisoned coffee, waiting for us to die. "She made her choice," I said. "Now she lives with the consequences." The night before the gathering, Gwen and I went through everything one final time. Video footage queued up, financial documents organized, lab reports ready, witness statements compiled, legal paperwork prepared. Philip had coordinated everything with military precision. Roberta and 2 uniformed officers would be waiting in our garage. At the signal, when we'd presented enough evidence that denial was impossible, they'd enter and make the arrest. "How are you feeling?" Gwen asked, sitting beside me on our bed. "Like I'm about to watch my daughter's life end," I said honestly, "and like I'm doing exactly what needs to be done." "Me too." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I keep thinking about all the times I could have stopped this, all the signs I missed." "You didn't miss them. You saw them. You told me about them. We just didn't want to believe our daughter could become someone who'd kill us for money. Tomorrow, everyone will know what she did." "Yes." I put my arm around her. "And she'll spend the next 2 decades thinking about how her greed destroyed her life. How she traded her family for money she never got. How she chose a con man over her parents." Gwen was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you think she'll hate us?" "Probably. But she already decided we were obstacles instead of parents. At least this way, she can't hurt anyone else." We sat there in the darkness, holding each other. 2 people who'd built a life on trust and love, preparing to publicly destroy their daughter because she'd tried to privately destroy them. "Dennis? Yeah? Thank you for being my partner in this. I couldn't have done it alone." I kissed the top of her head. 43 years, Gwen. We're a team. Always have been. Always will be." The next morning dawned clear and bright. Perfect weather for a family gathering. Perfect weather for justice. Quinn and Russell came downstairs around 10, both dressed nicely. Quinn in a dress I'd bought her for her birthday 2 years ago. Russell in a suit that probably cost more than he could afford. They were ready to celebrate their windfall. They had no idea they were dressed for their own execution. "Big day," Russell said cheerfully, grabbing coffee. "Excited?" "Very," I replied, and I meant it. Not the excitement he thought, but anticipation nonetheless. The satisfaction of knowing that in a few hours everything would be revealed, every lie exposed, every manipulation documented, every crime proven. Gwen came into the kitchen, smiled at us all. "Our guests start arriving at 2. Quinn, could you help me set up the living room? Dennis, Russell, maybe you could arrange the chairs?" We all moved through the preparations. One happy family, except 2 of us were pretending to be victims, and 2 of us were pretending to be loving children. In a few hours, the pretending would end, and the reckoning would begin.
People started arriving at 2 o'clock sharp. Our son Devin came first with his wife Sarah and their 3 kids, our grandchildren, who had no idea they were about to witness their aunt's arrest. My sister Margaret drove up from Seattle. Dennis's brother Robert flew in from California. Cousins, close friends, neighbors we'd known for 20 years. By 2:30, our living room held about 20 people, exactly as planned. Quinn and Russell worked the room like politicians, shaking hands, making small talk, playing the role of devoted daughter and son-in-law. I watched my daughter hug my sister, heard her tell Margaret how much she treasured family. The performance was flawless. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't watched her plot our murders, I might have believed it myself. But I did know better. And in about 10 minutes, so would everyone else. Detective Anderson and 2 officers were in our garage waiting. Philip was in Dennis's office, monitoring via the security cameras, ready to coordinate. Everything was in position. Dennis caught my eye across the room, raised an eyebrow slightly. Ready? I nodded once. Ready. He moved to the center of the living room, raised his voice slightly. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. Gwen and I wanted to gather our family and closest friends for a special announcement. The room quieted. Quinn and Russell moved to the front, expectant smiles on their faces. They thought this was their moment, their reward. They were right about it being a moment, just not the one they expected. 43 years ago, Dennis continued, Gwen and I got married. We built this house, raised our children, made a life we're proud of. And today, we want to share some important information about our family and our estate. I watched Quinn's hand find Russell's, saw them exchange a glance, pure greed and anticipation. But first, Dennis said, his tone shifting slightly, becoming colder, we need to address something that happened 6 months ago. Quinn's smile faltered, just a flicker, but I caught it, the first crack in her facade. Dennis picked up the remote control, pointed it at our television. On March 15th of this year, our daughter Quinn and her husband Russell attempted to murder us by poisoning our morning coffee with arsenic. Dead silence. Absolute, shocked silence. Quinn's face went white. Dad, what are you... The security footage is quite clear, Dennis continued, clicking play. On the screen, the video from March 12th appeared. Quinn and Russell in our kitchen, thinking we weren't home. Russell's voice, crystal clear. Once they're gone, everything transfers to you. The house alone is worth $870,000. Quinn's voice. I didn't think we'd actually... Russell. We're in debt up to our necks. This is the only way out. The room erupted. Gasps, exclamations. My sister Margaret actually cried out. But Dennis kept playing footage. The morning of March 15th, Russell making coffee, adding something to 2 specific cups, serving them to us with that triumphant smile. We switched the cups, I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. Everyone turned to look at me. Dennis and I both recognized what was happening, so we switched the cups while they weren't looking. Quinn and Russell drank their own poison. That's insane, Russell shouted. This is completely... There's more, Dennis said calmly. He pulled up the next set of documents on the screen. Life insurance policies, $500,000 each, with forged signatures. Beneficiary? Quinn Richardson Morgan. The insurance documents appeared on screen, complete with our supposedly signed forms. We never signed those, I said. Walter Griffin, a private investigator, had them analyzed. Forgeries. Quinn was shaking her head, backing away. No, this is wrong. Mum? Dad? I don't know where you're getting this. From your text messages, Dennis said. He displayed them on the screen. Quinn's words to her friend. Once my parents are out of the picture, Russell and I can finally start living the life we deserve. Russell's emails about significant assets within the month. The dark web transactions for arsenic purchases. The draft quitclaim deed for our house. Every piece of evidence methodically presented. Every lie exposed. I watched my daughter's face cycle through emotions. Denial, shock, fear, desperation. And finally, rage. You set us up, Quinn screamed. You knew, and you let us think. We let you believe you'd gotten away with attempted murder, Dennis said coldly, while we gathered evidence. Because unlike you, we believe in justice, not revenge. This is entrapment. Russell was red-faced, panicking. You can't. It's documentation, I corrected. Everything you did freely. We just didn't stop you from incriminating yourselves further. That's when the garage door opened. Detective Anderson walked in with 2 uniformed officers, badges visible. The room went silent again. Different silence this time. the silence of witnessing justice arrive. Quinn Richardson Morgan, Russell Morgan, Roberta said formally. You're under arrest for attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, forgery, and identity theft. Russell bolted, actually tried to run for the front door. One of the officers caught him easily, pulled his arms behind his back. Quinn turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Mom, please, I'm your daughter. You can't do this to me. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, saw the manipulation, the desperation, the complete absence of remorse. She wasn't sorry she'd tried to kill us. She was sorry she'd been caught. You tried to murder us, Quinn, I said quietly. You chose money over family. You chose greed over love. You made that choice. Not me. It was Russell. Quinn grabbed my arms, shaking me. He convinced me. He pressured me. I didn't want to. We have footage of you agreeing, Dennis said. We have your text messages. You chose this, Quinn. The officer moved to cuff her. Quinn resisted, screaming. You're doing this in front of everyone. You're humiliating me. You tried to kill us in our own home, I said. My voice was steel now, no warmth left. You forged our signatures. You planned to steal our house. You spent months researching how to murder us. And you think the humiliation of being arrested in front of family is disproportionate? Roberta was reading them their rights. Other officers were documenting everything. Our family and friends stood frozen, witnesses to something none of them had expected. My sister came to my side, put her arm around me. Gwen, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. None of us did, I said. Not until it was almost too late. Devin was crying. Our son, watching his sister being arrested. He came to Dennis and me, hugged us both fiercely. I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad you caught them. Quinn was still screaming as they led her out, screaming that we'd betrayed her, that we were monsters, that she'd never forgive us. I watched my daughter disappear through our front door in handcuffs and felt something inside me die, the last remnant of the girl I'd raised. The final hope that somewhere inside the woman who'd tried to murder us was a trace of the child I'd loved. But maybe that child had been gone longer than I wanted to admit. After they left, after the police cars pulled away, after the initial shock faded, our friends and family gathered around us. Questions, support, disbelief. We told the story again, showed the evidence again, let them see what we'd lived through. How are you not falling apart? Margaret asked me. How are you standing here so calm? Because I've had 6 months to process this, I said. 6 months of knowing my daughter tried to kill me. 6 months of preparing for this moment. The grief has had time to settle. What's left is just resolve. Dennis appeared at my side, put his arm around my waist. Our signal. I'm here. You're not alone. I leaned into him. We did it. We did, he agreed. Together. Do you think we did the right thing? He was quiet for a moment. Then, I think we did the necessary thing, which isn't always the same as the right thing. But it's all we had. Our guests started to leave eventually. Uncomfortable, but understanding. They hugged us, told us they supported us, promised they'd be there if we needed anything. When the last person left, Dennis and I stood in our living room, the room where we'd just destroyed our daughter's life, where we'd exposed her crimes in front of everyone who mattered to us. It's done, I said. Not quite. Dennis pulled out his phone. Philip texted, the DA wants to meet tomorrow, start building the prosecution case. This is just the beginning of the legal process. How long will it take? Months, maybe a year. Appeals, trials, sentencing. I sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. A year of reliving this. Dennis sat beside me, took my hand. A year of making sure they face full consequences. A year of ensuring this was worth it. Was it worth it? I asked quietly. Destroying our daughter? She destroyed herself, Dennis said firmly. The moment she chose poison over family, she destroyed herself. We just made sure there were consequences. I knew he was right. Intellectually, I knew. But my heart, my mother's heart, still ached. "Come on," Dennis said, pulling me to my feet. "Let's go sit in the garden, with your roses, away from all this." We walked outside. The evening was beautiful, warm and golden. My roses were blooming, their scent filling the air. Dennis pulled me close, and we stood there together, two people who'd survived attempted murder and orchestrated justice. 43 years, I whispered. 43 years, he echoed. And we're still standing, still together. Still us. Always us. We stood in our garden as the sun set, holding each other, knowing that tomorrow would bring more challenges, more legal battles, more pain. But tonight, we'd won. We'd survived. We'd ensured that attempted murder had consequences, and sometimes that had to be enough. Tomorrow, we'd face whatever came next, together, like we always had, like we always would. Because that's what 43 years of partnership means. That's what surviving attempted murder together creates. An unbreakable bond forged in betrayal and strengthened by justice. Quinn and Russell had tried to destroy us. Instead, they'd destroyed themselves. And we were still standing.
After the initial shock settled, after Quinn's screaming faded down our driveway in the back of that police car, I did something I hadn't done in 6 months. I smiled. Really smiled. Not the performance smile I'd been wearing around my daughter and her criminal husband. A genuine smile of satisfaction. "Dennis," Gwen touched my arm. "You okay?" "Better than okay." I looked around at our family and friends, still processing what they'd witnessed. "Everyone, I know that was difficult to watch. But Gwen and I need you to understand something. We didn't do this for revenge. We did it for justice, and for protection, ours and anyone else's they might have targeted." My brother Robert stepped forward. "How long have you known?" "Since the day it happened. 6 months of gathering evidence, building a case, making sure they couldn't escape consequences." I gestured to the living room. "Sit. Let me walk you through exactly what we found." Over the next hour, I presented everything to our family. Not the sanitized version, the complete truth. I showed them the security footage again, this time with narration explaining what we saw in Quinn and Russell's body language, their expressions, the moment they thought they'd succeeded. "Watch Russell here," I said, pointing to the screen. "That's not nervousness. That's anticipation. He's waiting for us to show symptoms. And Quinn—" I froze the frame on my daughter's face. "That's not fear. That's excitement." My sister-in-law looked away. "I can't believe she could do that to you." "Neither could we," Gwen said quietly beside me. "Not until we saw the evidence." I pulled up Walter's financial reports next, laid out every dollar of debt, every forged signature, every dark web transaction. My son Devin, our good son who'd supported us through this nightmare, asked the question everyone was thinking. "Did Quinn show any remorse? Ever?" "No." The word came out flat, final. Not once. Even when we confronted her today, she only cared that she'd been caught. Not that she'd tried to murder her parents, that she'd been exposed. I showed them the draft property deed. They were going to claim we'd voluntarily transferred our house to them before we died, had the paperwork ready to file the moment we were gone. They'd researched Oregon inheritance law, found the loopholes, prepared everything. "Except they didn't account for one thing," Gwen added, "that we might actually be smarter than they assumed. And that we'd fight back," I said. Met her eyes. Saw my partner of 43 years, steel wrapped in warmth. Together. The gathering broke up eventually. People left with promises of support, expressions of shock, questions we'd be answering for years. When the last guest departed, when it was just Gwen and me in our living room, the same room where we'd just destroyed our daughter's freedom, I felt something release in my chest. "It's really done," I said. "The arrest is done. Now comes the trial. With the evidence we have, that'll be quick." I was right. The prosecution moved fast. Philip coordinated with the district attorney's office, and within 2 weeks, Quinn and Russell were formally charged. Attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, forgery, identity theft. The charges read like a crime novel. Their bail hearing was almost comical. Russell's lawyer, some public defender who looked fresh out of law school, argued for release pending trial. Philip stood up, briefcase in hand, and methodically destroyed every argument. Your Honor, the defendants attempted to murder the proposed bail guarantors, Mr. and Mrs. Richardson, for financial gain. They forged documents, purchased poison illegally, and planned this crime over a period of months. They represent a clear flight risk and a danger to the victims. Bail denied. I watched Russell's face collapse when the judge made her ruling. Watched him realize he'd be sitting in county jail until trial. Quinn was already crying, mascara running down her face. She looked at Gwen and me in the gallery, and I saw it clearly. Not remorse, but rage. She was angry at us, for catching her, for fighting back, for not just dying like she'd planned. I felt nothing, no pity, no regret, just cold satisfaction. The trial itself was almost anticlimactic. With the sheer volume of evidence, video footage, financial records, forensic analysis, witness testimony, Quinn and Russell's defense attorneys had no room to maneuver. They tried the desperation defense. Quinn claimed Russell had manipulated her, that she was under his control. Russell claimed Quinn had initiated everything, that he'd just gone along. The jury didn't buy it. How could they when we had video of both of them planning together? Text messages from both? Financial documents both had signed? The prosecutor was brilliant. Young woman named Sarah Chen, sharp as a knife and twice as cutting. She walked the jury through everything, started with the debt, showed how Russell's gambling and Quinn's spending had backed them into a corner. Then the research, Russell's dark web purchases, his consultations with that chem-advice character about lethal doses. And here, Sarah said, pulling up the security footage on the courtroom's display, is the morning of the attempt. Watch Mr. Morgan prepare the coffee. Watch him add the arsenic to 2 specific cups. Watch him serve those cups to Mr. and Mrs. Richardson with a smile. The jury watched. Some looked sick. One woman in the back row was crying. But here's what Mr. and Mrs. Richardson did, Sarah continued. She showed the cup switch in slow motion. They recognized the danger. And in less than 10 seconds, working in perfect synchronization built over 4 decades of marriage, they switched the cups. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan drank their own poison, the poison they intended for 2 innocent people. The poison meant to murder parents for insurance money. Russell tried to maintain dignity through the trial, failed spectacularly. By day 3, he was visibly sweating during testimony. By day 5, he looked 10 years older. Quinn broke on the witness stand. The defense put her up thinking tears and apologies might sway the jury. Instead, under Sarah's cross-examination, Quinn fell apart, contradicted herself, admitted to things her lawyer had told her to deny. By the end, she was sobbing, makeup ruined, looking like exactly what she was, a woman who'd tried to commit murder and failed. The jury deliberated for 3 hours, came back with guilty verdicts on all counts, both of them. When the forewoman read the verdict, Russell actually collapsed, had to be helped back into his chair by the bailiffs. Quinn just sat there, staring at nothing, tears streaming silently down her face. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Patricia Morrison, who'd seen plenty of ugly cases in her career, but even she looked disgusted reading through the evidence. "Mr. Morgan," she said, her voice cold, "you researched methods of murder. You purchased poison. You planned the deaths of 2 people who had opened their home to you. For money, not self-defense, not passion. Premeditated murder for financial gain. I'm sentencing you to 22 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Russell's head dropped to the table. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder. "Ms. Richardson Morgan," Judge Morrison continued, turning to Quinn, "my daughter, who looked so small in that orange jumpsuit, so different from the confident woman who'd sat at our dinner table planning our deaths. You conspired with your husband to murder your own parents, the people who raised you, loved you, supported you. You forged their signatures. You helped plan their deaths. And you showed no remorse until you were caught. Quinn was shaking, holding on to the defendant's table like it was the only thing keeping her upright. I'm sentencing you to 18 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 12 years. Additionally, under Oregon's Slayer rule, you are permanently barred from any inheritance from your parents' estates, now or in the future. Quinn made a sound, half sob, half gasp, turned to look at us in the gallery. I met her eyes, held her gaze, let her see that I felt no pity, only justice. "Do you have anything to say?" Judge Morrison asked. Quinn opened her mouth, closed it, then quietly, "I'm sorry." "Sorry you did it?" I said, loud enough for her to hear. "Or sorry you got caught?" She flinched, didn't answer, couldn't answer. The bailiffs led them away. Russell first, stumbling, then Quinn, who looked back one more time. Not at me, at Gwen, some final appeal for maternal mercy that would never come. Outside the courthouse, Gwen and I stood on the steps. Press had showed up. Attempted murder cases involving family always drew attention, but Philip handled them while we just stood there, holding hands, watching the doors that had swallowed our daughter for the next 12 to 18 years. "How do you feel?" Gwen asked. I thought about it, really thought, like justice was served, like we're safe now, like we can finally move forward. No regrets about protecting us, about making sure they faced consequences. None. I squeezed her hand. "You?" "Same." She leaned against me, sad, but not sorry. We walked to our car, started the drive home, back to our house on Cedar Heights Drive, the house Quinn had tried to steal, the life she'd tried to end. But we were still here, still breathing, still together. And that, more than any verdict or sentence, was our real victory.
The month after the sentencing was strange, quiet, peaceful in a way our lives hadn't been peaceful in over 6 months. Dennis and I fell back into our routines, him in the garage with his clocks, me in the garden with my roses. But something was different now, lighter. We'd fought a war and won. Philip called one afternoon with news about the civil case. "The court has awarded you $840,000, all of Quinn and Russell's assets, bank accounts, vehicles, personal property, everything. They're being liquidated to pay the judgment." "We don't need the money," I said. "I know. But it's part of the justice. They tried to steal everything from you. Now they have nothing. Legally, financially, socially. They're destroyed." After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen where all this had started. The same table where Russell had served us poisoned coffee. The same chairs where Quinn had watched us drink it. That morning felt like a lifetime ago now. Dennis found me there, knew immediately what I was thinking. He always did. "You okay?" I was just remembering her as a little girl. My voice cracked slightly. She used to help me plant bulbs every fall. She'd get so excited watching them come up in spring, said it was like magic. He sat beside me, took my hand. "That girl is gone, Gwen. Maybe she's been gone longer than we realized." "I know. It's just... She was my daughter. For 37 years, she was my daughter. And she chose to stop being one the day she decided we were worth more dead than alive." He was right. I knew he was right. But grief doesn't follow logic. Even when justice is served, even when it was necessary, even when you did everything right, it still hurts to lose your child. "The will update is final," Dennis said after a moment. "Devin is now our sole heir. Philip filed all the paperwork. Quinn is permanently excluded under the Slayer rule." "Good. Devin deserves it. He stood by us." "He did." Dennis paused. "He asked if we wanted to visit Quinn in prison, said he's planning to go see his sister, wanted to know if we'd come with him." I thought about it. Imagined sitting across from Quinn in some visitation room, seeing her in prison clothes, trying to find words that would matter. "No," I said finally. "She made her choice. We made ours. There's nothing left to say." That's what I told him. We sat in comfortable silence. Outside, I could see my roses blooming in the garden. Deep reds and soft pinks and bright yellows. Beautiful and thriving. I'd planted most of them years ago, when Quinn was still in high school, back when I thought I was raising a good person, back when I believed family meant something unbreakable. Do you think we could have stopped this? I asked. If we'd seen the signs earlier, intervened somehow? Dennis was quiet, considering. Maybe. But Quinn was an adult. She made adult choices. And Russell, he found someone vulnerable to manipulation and exploited it. We can't blame ourselves for that. I'm her mother. I should have known. You're human, Gwen, not omniscient. He turned to face me. And even if you'd known, even if you'd tried to help, she might have done this anyway. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, who'd rather murder than admit they need help. I knew he was right. Intellectually, I knew. But the mother in me, the part that had held Quinn as a baby, that had kissed her scraped knees and celebrated her victories, that part would always wonder. Come on, Dennis said, standing and pulling me up with him. Let's go work in the garden. Your roses need attention, and I need to help you give it. We spent the afternoon together outside, me pruning and weeding, Dennis helping with the heavier work. The physical labor helped, reminded me that life continued, that beauty still existed, that we still had each other. Our son Devin came by that evening with his family. Our grandchildren, 7, 9, and 11, ran through the house like they always did. The 9-year-old Emma asked where Aunt Quinn was. She's away, I said simply. For a long time. Did she do something bad? Kids always knew somehow, sensed the truth beneath the careful words. Yes, I said. She made very bad choices, and now she's facing the consequences. Emma thought about this. Like when I got in trouble for lying about breaking the vase. Exactly like that, except grown-up consequences for grown-up mistakes. She nodded, satisfied with this explanation, and ran off to play with her siblings. Devin watched her go, then turned to us. How are you really doing? Both of you? Dennis and I exchanged a look. That wordless communication we'd perfected over 4 decades. We're okay, I said. It hurts. It'll always hurt. But we're okay. And you're both sure about the will? About everything going to me? Completely sure, Dennis said firmly. You stood by us. You supported us. You showed us what real family looks like. This house, our savings, everything. It's yours someday. When we're actually gone. Naturally. Not because someone poisoned our coffee. Devin hugged us both. I love you. Both of you. And I'm so glad you're still here. After they left, after the sun set and the evening turned cool, Dennis and I sat on our back porch. The same porch where I'd first overheard Quinn talking about how we were holding on to the house like we'd live forever. The same porch where I'd started to realize my daughter had become someone I didn't know. 43 years, Dennis said quietly. 43 years, I echoed. We've been through a lot. Raising kids, job stress, financial ups and downs. But this, he shook his head. This was the hardest. And we survived it. Together? Together? He took my hand. You know what I realized through all this? What really stood out? What? That cup switch. That moment when everything could have gone wrong. We had maybe 10 seconds to figure out what was happening and respond. And we did it perfectly. Wordlessly. Like we'd been practicing for decades. We had been, I said. Every day of our marriage has been practice for being partners, for trusting each other completely, for acting as one. Exactly. He smiled. They thought they could outsmart us. 2 people they saw as old, naive, easy targets. But they forgot, or never understood, that 2 people who've been together as long as we have become more than just individuals. We're a unit, a team. You can't separate us, can't divide us, can't play us against each other. We're a partnership, I agreed. In everything. Always have been. We sat there as stars came out, holding hands, Two people who'd survived attempted murder not just through luck or cleverness, but through 43 years of learning to function as one. Through communication so deep it didn't need words. Through trust so complete that in a moment of mortal danger we'd moved in perfect synchronization. Quinn and Russell had tried to kill us. Instead, they'd demonstrated everything they'd never understood about real partnership, real love, real family. "Do you think the story's over?" I asked. "Or will there be more? Appeals, parole hearings, legal complications?" "There'll be more," Dennis said. "Russell and Quinn will probably appeal. They'll come up for parole eventually. Russell in 15 years, Quinn in 12. But the core story, the attempted murder, the investigation, the justice, that's done. We won." "We won," I repeated. Let the words settle. Let myself feel the truth of them. We'd won. Not just the legal battle. Not just the arrests and convictions and sentences. We'd won something deeper. We'd proven that love and partnership and 43 years of building trust couldn't be broken by greed or destroyed by betrayal. We'd shown that underestimating the people you try to murder is a fatal mistake. And we'd demonstrated that justice, when pursued with patience and precision and unwavering partnership, will always triumph over crime. The next morning, I found Dennis in the garage working on that 1887 clock he'd been restoring since before this all began. The one he'd been fixing the morning Russell tried to poison us. "Did you ever finish it?" I asked. "Just now, actually." He wound it carefully, set the time, and we watched together as the mechanism clicked into place. Perfect rhythm, steady ticking, time moving forward, as it always does. "It's beautiful," I said. "Took 6 months longer than it should have. Got distracted by attempted murder and a criminal investigation." I laughed, actually laughed. "That'll do it." He set the clock on his workbench, cleaned his tools, then turned to me. "What do you want to do today?" "I don't know. Something normal. Something that isn't about Quinn or Russell or murder or justice. Something that's just us. Walk to that coffee shop you like? Get breakfast? Sit in the park?" "Perfect." We walked to the cafe, a little place downtown we'd been going to for 20 years, ordered our usual, sat at our usual table by the window, watched Portland wake up around us. Couples walking dogs, business people heading to work. Life, normal and beautiful and continuing. "You know what I'm grateful for?" Dennis said, sipping his coffee. "Real coffee. Not poisoned. Not tainted by attempted murder. Just good normal coffee." "What?" "That when they tried to poison us, we were together. That I wasn't alone. That I had you there. That we figured it out together. That we survived together." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Me too. I can't imagine going through any of this without you." "You'll never have to." He reached across the table, took my hand. 43 years down. However many more we get to share, 20, 30, hopefully more, we'll face them the same way. Together. As partners. As a team. "As us," I said. "As us," he agreed. We finished our breakfast, walked home through familiar streets, past houses where neighbours waved, past the park where we used to take Quinn and Devin when they were little, past the coffee shop where they'd been babies, toddlers, children, teenagers, adults, past all that history into the present, into our future. Back home, Dennis returned to his clocks. I went to my garden. We worked in our separate spaces, doing our separate hobbies. But we weren't separate, not really. We were orbiting each other like we always had, connected by 4 decades of partnership, by love that had survived the ultimate betrayal, by trust that had been tested and proven stronger than poison. That evening, we sat in the garden again. My roses perfumed the air. Dennis's restored clock ticked steadily from the garage, everything in its place, everything as it should be. "Do you think we'll ever fully recover from this?" I asked. "No," Dennis said honestly. "You don't fully recover from your child trying to murder you. But we'll adapt. We'll grow around the wound. We'll keep living. That's what survival means." And we'll do it together. Always together? He squeezed my hand 3 times. Our old signal. I love you. 43 years, Gwen. Best 43 years of my life, even with the attempted murder. I laughed through tears. Even with the attempted murder. We sat there as twilight deepened into night. 2 people who'd survived the unthinkable, holding hands in the garden they'd built together, in the home they'd defended together, living the life they'd fought to keep. Quinn and Russell were in prison. Justice had been served. And Dennis and I were here, together, still standing, still loving, still us. That was our victory. Not the convictions or the sentences or the legal judgments. Our victory was survival, partnership. Love that poison couldn't kill, and that would always be enough. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.